Welcome to segment 3 of Plato is Still Relevant, an annotated summary of Plato's Republic. Today we're going to pick up on the third argument. We've had the argument, tell the truth, return what you owe, which are good things in the sense world, but Socrates doesn't think it's quite justice. Help friends, harm enemies, which was a big part of the ancient world. Might makes right. And now we are in Thrasymachus's argument, which still holds might makes right. He argues justice is the advantage of the strongest. Now we're going to look at this argument in detail. The notion of framing bad laws. We'll have a doctor example, sheep example. Thrasymachus' notion that unjust people get the better of just people because they're simpletons every time. Socrates will talk about unworthy motives, honor, money. The big refutation of justice is the advantage of the strongest is there's no skill, whatever benefits itself. We'll get into that. And finally, justice is a function of the soul or the human psyche or the mind, just like the retina or the cornea is a function of the eye. And if one of the retina or the cornea doesn't work right, the whole eye doesn't work right. If a part of the soul doesn't work right, the whole character of the person suffers. So, back to the argument. Thrasymachus steps in and says, in the sense world, in the real world, justice is the advantage of the strongest. And Socrates goes, yeah, I do believe that justice is an advantage. But really, of the strongest? Yes. The government frames the laws, they're in power, you break the government's laws, you're unjust, and you go to jail. And whatever, it doesn't matter, whether it's a democracy, an oligarchy, or a tyranny. That's the government makes up the laws. And Socrates says, well, wait a minute. Don't governments make mistakes? Frame bad laws? I'm going to go a little, let's assume global warming is true. And I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But just for the sake of argument, let's assume it's true. Our culture practices an economy that could be melting the planet. If that's true, I have no way of knowing. But then one could say our country has framed bad laws that are going to end up destroying the land and the very resources upon which our whole economy is based. Don't governments frame bad laws? And if it's the citizen's job to only obey the laws, couldn't justice not be the advantage of the strongest because the strongest framed a bad law? Then Thrasymachus says, no, we are going to say governments always frame good laws. When you slip, if you're a craftsman, if you're a fence builder, and you miss the nail in that moment when you hammered the nail and made the nail go crooked, you weren't a craftsman. You're a doctor, the moment you make a bad diagnosis, you're not a doctor. Once the ruler frames a bad law, he's not a ruler anymore. Oh, okay, says Socrates, if you're going to say everything's got to be what it is and not its opposite, right? I'll accept that. Fine. So, a doctor is healthy, a patient is sick. The doctor makes the patient better. The patient gets health. What's the doctor get? Squat. That's why there's the associated skill of wage earning. A guy builds a fence. You get a fence. What does the fence builder get? Squat. Because no skill benefits itself. At which point Thrasymachus says, oh, Socrates, now you're going to say the ruler rules because he cares about the people. Do you think a shepherd takes care of that herd because he cares about the sheep? No, he wants to fleece them and make lamb chops. That's what governments do. And Socrates says, well, and Thrasymachus goes on another bout. He goes, all this talk of justice, just people are simple, dumb fools. The unjust, crafty person gets the better of the just person every time. Injustice or injustice is superior to justice. Just people are fools. And this is how Thrasymachus argues. And Socrates goes, wait a minute, back to the shepherd or our ruler. Don't you understand that to do something for honor or to do something for money is an unjust motive? Take a teacher. If a teacher is teaching simply because they want the adoration of their pupils, do you think that person will be a good teacher? If someone's teaching just for the paycheck and doing what the boss says so they get the paycheck, will they be a good teacher? Or if the teacher teaches because he wants to pass on healthy questions and the previous generation's answers, who's going to be the better teacher? The motive is important, Thrasymachus. And honor and money, which you're talking about this shepherd, that's all he wants, to fleece his people and make lamb chops out of them, that's an unworthy motive. We've got to look at this thing. There is no skill out there practiced that benefits itself. It just doesn't happen. Now, says Socrates, he goes, justice is a function of the soul, just like the retina or the cornea is a function of the eye. If the retina or the cornea don't function, you get cataracts, your cornea doesn't function well, you don't see well, the whole world's a cloud. Likewise, one of the functions of the soul is justice, and if you don't practice justice, your whole character suffers. And the crowd, Glaucon, Adeimantus, and other people among there are agreeing. Thrasymachus he's still not with it. He still doesn't agree, but he is hearing the argument. And at this point, Book 1 ends, and it seems like the advantage of the strongest is refuted, though Thrasymachus isn't going to give it up, simply because that's the way it is in the sense world, and you can't argue with that. That's whoever's in power, whether it be your boss or the government, tells you what to do, and if you don't do it, you're a bad employee or a bad citizen. But Socrates disagrees. He goes, that's in the sense world. There's a justice higher. And at this point, Socrates says, I'm disappointed. I went off and said something about justice. We know justice is a function of the soul, but we've lost track of our theme. What is justice? We haven't got to it. So, ends Book 1. There's 10 books to the Republic. We have now finished Book 1. And Socrates is a little upset. Please join me for segment 2, where Glaucon won't let Thrasymachus give up the argument. He'll give us the popular view of justice, and he's going to put Socrates in a tough situation. He's going to ask Socrates to defend goodness for goodness sake. Being good is worth it regardless of the consequences. To be honest is good for its own sake, not for a credit score. He wants Socrates to prove justice is good for justice's sake. He's going to say, I've never heard that argument before. It's tough because we're after that ideal justice. Please sign up, like, dislike, subscribe, and join me for the next segment. And remember, let's make Socrates a part of our everyday life. Thank you.